The countryside of the northeastern Congo is beautiful, and the soil is rich and fertile, and yet the people here live in poverty and constant fear of attack by armed militias. Over 120 such groups have been operating for more than 2 decades on the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, along its northern borders to South Sudan, Uganda, and Rwanda. Neither the government nor tens of thousands of UN peacekeepers have been able to stop them, and the people's suffering inevitably leads to more suffering as victims join one rebel group or the other.
They killed my father. They killed everyone in my family. That's the only reason I became a fighter.
A woman grieves for her murdered child, an all too common sight in the northeastern Congo. The militias killed around 2,000 people here in 2020 alone. The worst of them call themselves the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF. They're Islamist rebels who've been terrorizing the local population for some 30 years.
They kill people with bullets. They kill people with machetes. They killed my brother with machetes.
The Islamists attack every few days, often under cover of darkness. They leave devastation behind, burned out houses and beheaded corpses. The local people feel like the Congolese army and the UN peacekeepers have abandoned them. We joined up with a UN patrol in Beni, one of the trouble spots. Attacks by the ADF on the civilian population here have been on the increase in recent months. The UN patrol checks up on a clinic in Meimoa. It's been a frequent target of ADF attacks. Mbusa Kiwuhwa is the clinic's director.
The militia comes here and massacres people. If you saw the sheer hatred that drives the killing, they chop heads off, and you find the brains all around, and chopped off feet. That leaves you terrified and traumatized.
Once, the Islamists tried to abduct 4 of his nurses.
They took them hostage in the waiting area. When the people there realized it was the ADF, they were scared. But then the militia said nobody would die. It wasn't a day for killing.
Many in the area live in fear. UN soldier Busisiwa Isaacs knows the clinic and the people who work there very well.
As you can see, the nurses cannot really wear their nursing uniform because when they are attacked and identified, they are the ones that are targeted to be killed first. Hence, when they come to work, they have to dress like everybody else.
The constant threat level keeps the clinic closed all but a few hours a day. Many patients are left without treatment.
They struggle with food. They cannot go and plow. They cannot go and farm. They have to stay at home. They cannot move. The children cannot go to school.
So far, the UN force has failed to establish and maintain security. Often enough, the more than 18,000 troops from nearly 50 nations can hardly even get themselves coordinated. Many of them are inadequately trained, or at least not trained with the relevant skills. The local villagers aggravate the problems with often unjust accusations that the UN troops are a pack of thieves, only concerned with their own safety. Many of the Congolese no longer put any hopes in the UN troops at all. And the local people too often find themselves caught between fronts when their daughters and sons actually join the ADF. So the parents end up cooperating with the rebels, supplying them food, for example. In return, they're left in peace. But if they refuse, they may be killed.
Sometimes we're content, sometimes we're afraid. The militias can show up anytime. They've become part of our daily lives.
Most of the local people are afraid to appear before the camera. One man, who didn't want to say his name, gives vent to his frustration.
The government should help, or the international community should help our government with this situation. So many people have suffered. The ADF's got to be finished.
In the meantime, the ADF keeps on murdering. As soon as the camera's off, many people here say the soldiers come too late, only once the attack's over and people are already dead. We meet Jaribu Muliwavyo, a local representative who's been studying the ADF for years. In his view, the UN mission has not achieved its goals.
The communities here really ought to be secured. According to my research, as many as 4,500 people have been killed right under the UN forces' noses. And what's their job again? To protect the civilian population. But more are getting killed every day.
The ADF was founded as an Islamist group in Uganda in the early 1990s. Experts have estimated their current strength at a few hundred fighters. They're seen as exceptionally cruel and intent on establishing Islamic Sharia law in the territory they control.
They want to create a space, a gray area, where the state has no authority. They intend to control this area and exploit it. It's what they call the Islamic State of Central Africa, the Caliphate of Central Africa. They've already set it up. To them, this state is already up and running.
In March 2021, the United States designated the ADF a terrorist organization with ties to the Islamic State. But some observers doubt the two groups maintain any direct contact. Besides the ADF, over 120 other militias are active in the eastern Congo. After the 1994 genocide in neighboring Rwanda, some Hutu militias fled to the Congo and kept on killing. That prompted the formation of armed groups, originally for purposes of self-defense. They do not make it easy to contact them. To do so, we had to leave the area under central government control. Halfway there, militia fighters meet up to lead us to one of their bases. Among them is Mama Faida. She joined the militia about 20 years ago after an armed group massacred her family. She was forced to watch as the men killed her parents with machetes. Then 6 of the men raped her. She was only 15 years old at the time.
I felt defeated. My life had defeated me. I saw what they had done to me and how they had murdered my family. I couldn't keep living my life the way I had. So I decided to become a fighter and drive them out.
When a former teacher came to her village to recruit young people for a new militia, she joined him. Many of its members have experienced similar horrors. It is, in essence, a militia of traumatized and emotionally scarred people.
They killed my father. They killed everyone in my family. That's the only reason I became a fighter.
Her own community cast her out because she'd been raped. Too great was the stigma. The militia offered her a chance to take revenge and to survive. They control around 20 villages in the region, protecting the inhabitants, who in return keep them supplied with food. It's a simple trade, security for food, but we got the impression it wasn't always a voluntary arrangement. Mama Faida didn't speak openly until we moved some distance from the others.
I've heard that others are fleeing the group, but how could I run away? I have nobody to help me. I don't own any land. I don't have anyone who could help me build a new life.
Now she places all her hopes on her children, her hope that one day they'll have a choice.
With the blessings of God, I might at least arrange for them to get an education. If they are blessed, at least that. I myself will never be able to do any other job. I can't help them by myself.
Hardly any other region has suffered atrocities by the militias as badly as the Congo's Ituri province. We go on the road with the Norwegian aid organization. Over a distance of just 60 kilometers, we pass through about 20 checkpoints of various rebel groups, as well as the Congolese military. By the side of the road, a few are carrying guns, though concealing them. Often they ask for money, as they are doing here. But a few words convince them to wait for another day. Drodro is a camp for internally displaced people. It's one of many in the Congo. About 5.5 million of the country's 105 million people are displaced, more than anywhere else in Africa. Logojoro barely escaped her village when a militia attacked it. She was on the run with her children when she realized her daughter was missing.
I decided to go back to find and save her. I was convinced she was still alive, but unfortunately, she was already dead. I was so sad, just devastated. When I walked past them, they shot at me. I had no idea if I'd survive. I gradually lost all my strength. I heaved and was breathing harder and harder. Then I slipped into some bush. I didn't really have any hope anymore. I was sure I was going to die.
She survived, but her 4-year-old daughter was murdered. As soon as the hospital released her, she gathered her other 5 children and fled to this camp. Even if food, water, and medical care are in short supply, at least they are safe here. Many people here have stories like Logojoro's to tell. They live in desperation and resignation. The trauma runs deep. And like Logojoro, although they don't have the money to send them to school, they still put their hope in their children. And so another generation is growing up without education as easy potential recruits for the militias.